Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got David Osborn with us today. He's a legend. I mean, he's co-founder of GoBundance, is also a New York Times best-selling author, and obviously a successful real estate entrepreneur investor. But I'm sure you can do a way better job than I can, David. Can you just kind of tell our Dwell listeners a little bit more about who you are and kind of what you've been up to lately, actually?
Sure, Ola. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having me on your show. I've been a real estate guy for 25 years. I'm the son of a soldier and a real estate agent, and I chose the real estate path. I was lucky enough to join a fast-growing real estate company in 1994 called Keller Williams. Sold for a few years, started buying franchises, became the largest franchise owner in the company. With a partner, we sell $12 billion a year in real estate and about 37,000 homes. In the downturn, I started investing heavily in real estate, had dabbled in it for years, but in 2009, 10, 11, we went big, started a private equity firm buying distressed debt and real estate. And then around 2013, we started GoBundance, which is an entrepreneurial adventure mastermind for people that want to be held accountable to higher levels of success in their life. And then in 2016, I became a New York Times bestselling author with Wealth Can't Wait. Since then, I've written 2 more books, The Miracle Morning Millionaires with Hal Elrod and Tribe of Millionaires. I'm a father of 3 wonderful children and married to a beautiful wife.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you so much I mean, that is such an amazing, kind of synopsis. I love how you've kind of packaged that. So let's kind of unpack that a little bit more, right? So you were selling real estate. Yeah. You were selling real estate, right? And then you felt, well, actually, I kind of want to scale. So what I want to know is actually, why did you get into real estate? You said your father was in the army, your mom was in the real estate business, and you chose the real estate path. Why though?
So even when I was a kid, I had a lawn mowing company. So I was one of those lawnmower kids. My mom and dad had a few rentals, and I would cut the yards and do maintenance for them. My dad was a soldier, and in Gulf War I, he said, "Son, you need to sign up. There's nothing like being on the battlefield." So I called my mom and I said, "Hey, Mom, Dad's trying to get me killed. I need a job." So I actually love the Army, and I'm kidding a little bit. I love my dad. He was a Green Beret, and I looked heavily at maybe being in the Marines, but ultimately real estate always called me. I saw the potential because my folks had these rentals. Even in the downturn, they went through the 80s downturn, but I saw the potential of owning assets that would pay me a distribution every month, a rental check, whether I worked or not. Freedom was very important to me. One of my strongest drives is freedom, especially financial freedom. And I just saw real estate as a better path to that. For sure, if you serve 30 years in the Army, they take care of you and you get a really good pension. Even 20 years is a lesser pension. But it was real estate was the path that I saw that I could find the way to the life that I wanted to create. And so I went to work with my mom at the beginning as a salesperson. And after 3 years of selling, I always knew I would own and invest. I didn't know necessarily I was going to do franchises, but I happened to be with a very fast growing company, and I was very early at that company. And I started buying franchises in the Keller Williams system in 1996.
Awesome. Okay, so you were with Keller Williams, and then you kind of you started growing with the company. I think for a lot of Dwell listeners listening in, it's usually do that first deal, right? So what was that very first deal? Of course, like you said, you kind of bought the franchise business, but what was that first real estate deal that actually got you into the game?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the first deal was, I remember it like, like it's just so personal to me. I walked into a house with a client. The client happened to be my sister. And I said, "Hey, are you going to buy this house?" And it was a $77,000 house in Austin, Texas, 1,500 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. And I said, "Are you going to buy it?" She said, "No." I said, "Good, because I am." So I made an offer. I bought it for $77,000, put $20,000 into it, every penny I had to my name. So $57,000 mortgage, and that was in 1995. I moved into the house. I rented it I lived in it for a year or so. I was in my 20s. Pretty soon I realized I didn't want to manage it. I didn't want to cut the yards. So I moved back into an apartment and I turned it into a rental. And that was my first deal. I still own that house today. Today it's probably worth $350,000. It's rented. I think I rent it out now for $1,200 a month. Back then it was like $800 a month, and it has no mortgage on it anymore. I put it on a 15-year note. It's fully paid for. And I love that house. It's like the one that I cut my teeth on. I just had an intuitive knowing as soon as I walked into it that this is a house that I could afford and that I should buy. In the year I lived there, I had roommates. So, house hacking is a popular term nowadays. I encourage all young people I meet, and it's more expensive today, I think, especially if you want to live close to the city, but either live further away, but either way, buy a 3-bedroom house, rent out 2 of the bedrooms for $300 a month, which is what I did. So I was living there paying $200 a month in the master bedroom. And then pretty soon I just wanted to be back in an apartment, so I moved back in an apartment and rented the whole house out. All those years, the rental payments pretty much always covered the mortgage payment, the principal and interest. Some repairs, occasionally I had to dig into my pocket. Rental property is one of those things that is very boring and steady for a long time, and then suddenly it becomes amazing. But it takes it's not that exciting to make an extra $100 a month. But when you've suddenly paid the house off like I have, so now that $1,200 a month, I probably spend 40% of it. So now it's $800 a month free and clear. And that $20,000 I invested is now turned into $350,000 over, a 20+ year period.
Yeah, I really love the way you kind of broke that down. Yeah, like I'm kind of like in that phase. Obviously I started with house hacking as well. And now it's kind of like just kind of vanilla, right? It's kind of boring. But like you said, when you pay that mortgage off and your $100, $200 a month turns into, 800 or 1,000, then it gets really exciting, right? So thanks for sharing that. I want to kind of go to, the GoBundance, right? I mean, you've done businesses in like 40 states, even in Canada. So the real estate investing side is pretty, pretty robust, right? Why start this, accountability group? I mean, you mentioned freedom a lot as well. So, I mean, I've heard of GoBundance. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about GoBundance and why you guys actually started it?
Well, first, I should say that every one of your listeners can get a free copy of Tribe of Millionaires if they just go to tribeofmillionaires.com. That's that book. And that explains a lot of what we're doing in GoBundance. For me, GoBundance is a way to give back. So many people have poured into me in my life. And one of the things that was super important to my development as a human was in 1997, I went to a mastermind, so 22 years ago now. And the guy running the mastermind said, you're going to pick a guy out of this room, and they're going to be your peer partner. They're going to hold you accountable. And the fee they're going to charge you is that you're going to hold them accountable. So it's reciprocation. It's just a trade. And there was a guy there that was about my age. Most of the people in the room were older. I was in my 20s then. And his name was Pat Hyben. And I gave him the nod, and he nodded back at me, and we became peer partners. And now for 22 years, we've held each other accountable, originally just for working hard and originally for, having dollar productive days. And then it evolved into being held accountable to fitness goals, to taking days off, to passive income, horizontal income. Then instead of going to seminars together, we started doing adventure trips together and having the same conversations about our lives, our business, how to be a better father, how to be a better husband. We met a guy in 2004 called Tim Rode who joined us, who was already retired and financially free. And we basically evolved this ecosystem around accountability, creating a vision, sharing that vision with your peer partners, and being held accountable to the vision you've created. And for me, from my development as sort of a kind of a nerdy, dorky kid, I definitely wasn't one of those A-type take charge kids as a youngster. I am today, but I wasn't back then. These two guys that influenced me to become a better man over 20+ years have been as instrumental to me almost as my parents, almost as Gary Keller, who's my #1 mentor. They've been influences in my life because rather than being my coaches and teachers, they literally held me accountable to doing what I said I was going to do. So that's really what we've been doing for 20 years. All three of us are financially free. We're all real estate guys, and we're all independently wealthy. Along the journey, we added a guy called Mike McCarthy to the journey. And honestly, Ola, we just got bored of our stories. So we kind of like, after doing all this amazing stuff and all having financial success, one day around 2011, we said, well, what if we invited some other people? Maybe they would like this. And we invited four people to go with us on a trip. And then one of them had come from a background of personal training and development, a guy, Rock Thomas, another good friend of mine. And he said, look, you guys have something here. You need to develop this into a course and you need to offer it to people. It's a technology that could change people's lives. So we did that. We opened it up and we went 11, 24, 45, 100, 150. Now we're at 200 members. And we're changing lives. We've had guys in the tribe lose 60 pounds. We've had guys go from zero passive income to 200,000 a year passive income in 5 years. We've had guys become better fathers. We've all had bucket list adventures together. And what we're really trying to do is create a higher level of conscious awareness about your life plan. Because if you'll just open up your mind and be consciously aware of where you are and where you want to go and how to get there, the next thing you need is a peer group or an accountability group that help you get there. There's a reason that athletes hold each other accountable. There's a reason that when a team isn't doing well in any sport, they have a players only meeting to have accountability, to bring their life to another level. And I would say, other than the intention to be more and do more and have a better life, the second most important thing other than that inner choice is who you hang out with. And if you hang out with a bunch of people who are committed to full responsibility for everything in their life and who are committed to excellence and growing as a person, it's actually impossible not to grow. And at the same time, if you commit to all that stuff, but you're hanging out with a bunch of people that just want to drink and do nothing and be lazy, it's almost impossible to overcome that inertia that's created by a bunch of people that aren't driven to be successful. So that's GoBundance almost birthed itself. And for me, it's about giving back and teaching. Sure, we make some money from it, but it's not significant to what I've created in the past. We looked at doing a nonprofit once, but it's just overly complicated and not necessary. So we created a for-profit business, and it's just been so rewarding to have people email me or text me on a, almost a weekly basis, or certainly, every couple of weeks, and just say, hey, because of this, this, and this has impacted my life. And then to see the people, with the passive income. My one friend who was making $1 million a year but had zero passive, and now he's got almost 200,000 a year passive in like 5 years. It just makes me so proud, and I just enjoy that part of the journey.
I bet. Yeah. I mean, we're talking before the show. I've heard a lot about GoBundance. I haven't, actually looked into it. I will now. So, I mean, obviously, yeah, I dwell in them. For me personally, I'm so huge on mindset. I feel like, the most important real estate is 6 inches, and it's between our ears, right? It's our mind.
That's very true. Well said.
Yeah. But, the reality is you made a fantastic point is if you don't have somebody actually holding you accountable, I mean, it doesn't really matter how motivated or, how great your mindset is if actually nobody's saying, hey, did you do what we're going to do this week or, by next week or whatever. So I really love that concept. So my question for you is, with someone trying to start out in real estate, right? Should they go for kind of like the mindset, accountability kind of angle first, or should they go with just sheer knowledge, like technical know-how? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the mindset is the most important piece. So, you hit that right on the head. I mean, people always ask, 90% of your effort should be spent developing yourself. There's a reason that people that start winning in life keep winning. And there's a reason we have this wealth inequality, which is a problem, is because once you get it, that you're accountable for everything that happens, and that the more you develop the self, the more you'll win. It's like a virtuous cycle. People have vicious cycles where they just fall and fall and fall. Something goes wrong, and then something goes wrong, and then something goes wrong. And they don't have a support system. They end up living in their car. Maybe they turn to drugs, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. But there's also a virtuous cycle, which is the exact opposite of that. You start having wins. You start thinking more clearly. You start understanding that victimhood, while very valid, horrible things happen, doesn't help you get out of anything. So yes, there's a place to acknowledge the pain and the suffering and the misfortune that people have. And the only way to make transformation is being 100% responsible for your reality, not necessarily what happens to you. You're not responsible for that, but you are responsible for your reality and your actions you take going forward. And once you get that and you start putting it in place, over 10 years, you'll notice a difference. Over 20 years, it's incredible. Like if I look at who I was to who I am today, the benefits of all this thinking that I've worked on for so many years, like my health is better than it's ever been. My relationship with my wife's better than my relationship with my kids. My financial situation keeps getting better. And it's really this mindset of constantly asking myself, what could I tweak? What could I do better? How could I be 100% responsible for, at creation, not effect of what happens to me? And so that's all from the mindset piece. So that's the most important. But if you're super motivated and super well developed and you're not doing anything, then you're just like super well developed and not doing anything. So you still have to take action. And that's where your tribe comes in. The knowledge helps you make good decisions. The mistakes actually teach you more than the good things because you never forget them because they're painful. But the knowledge is what's going to get you there. And so you've got to have the right mindset. But if you're just happy, motivated, and you're not taking action, you're just a happy, motivated, non-action based person. So that's not useful either. So you've got to like be in that environment. I think that's where your peers come in, because I think one of the greatest things I do for other people is they hang out with me and they go, wow, if he can do it, anybody can do it. Because one of the things about all of us as humans, we're like, that guy's not that much smarter than me. He's not that much more talented than me. And yet he is killing it. That means I can as well. So that's where your peer group comes in and everything else. So yeah, the mindset's most important, but they're all equally important, because the mindset will teach you, you have to build knowledge, and then you'll build knowledge and it'll stack on top of itself and make you more and more successful over time.
So thank you so much for sharing that. So you talk a lot about kind of auditing your life, kind of turning around this aircraft carrier if you're going towards the wrong place. How can I, kind of repurpose my life or kind of reprogram my life, you said? Can you kind of go through those steps for us?
Well, what you begin to realize, Ola, is that life is all about incremental changes. It's the tiny little habits that determine your destiny, it's not some big, you're not on the road to Damascus and a light comes from the clouds and you see God. That almost never happens, maybe to some people. But for most of us, it's changing, reducing the volume of the bad habits and turning up the volume of the good habits. And if you do that every day, every week, every month, every year, then 1 year you won't see much of a difference, and you'll overestimate the changes you can see in 1 year, which is why so many people show up really enthusiastic and then they get burned out and very disappointed because they don't get the results they expect to make. Like you said, house hacking seems boring, and it does, and it was for me too. But the other part of that story I didn't tell you is after 4 years, I refinanced 60 grand out of that house and I bought 3 other houses. So really that one $20,000 investment became 4 houses that today have $600,000 in equity in them and pay me $4,000 gross, $2,800 net. So that original $20,000 today, 22 years later, is paying me about $32,000 a year passive and has created for me $600,000 in equity, which, by the way, if I wanted to be more aggressive, I could refinance it out and buy more assets. But I've kept that as a little bubble opportunity to explain to people what's possible. So the incremental changes to the positive over time is what makes all the difference. So what you need to do then is like, okay, be conscious of what's working, what's not, decide what you're going to change and what you're not going to change, and then be in an environment with people that have made those changes. The tribal effect is so huge in life. So even if you're making all the right decisions, but you're in the wrong group of people, it's almost impossible to overcome that human desire to connect and socialize and be like other people, social proof. And in the same way, if you're fighting it and struggling with it, but you're around a bunch of badasses who are making stuff happen, it's almost impossible not to be drug up to a higher level of success. So the way I've changed my life is always I'm very committed to the vision. So the vision is to have an amazing life, be a great father, a great husband, have massive financial success, be in great physical shape, and have that for a lifetime, and give away a lot of money and contribute a lot to others. So that's the big vision. But then I set goals on an annual basis, and I'm very obsessed with my goals. And this has been a habit I've created over 20 plus years. So if I showed you my journal here, you'd see like I've got about 80 goals there that are pretty detailed.
Oh, wow.
And that's the 8 gardens of life. So I think every year and on a continuous basis, I'm already working on my 2020 goals. What would I like to happen in the next 12 months? And I break it down into family, relationship, spiritual contribution. I always put those are the first 2 on my goal list, because to be honest with you, that's the ones that I've historically struggled with the most, especially relationship. I come from there's some great books on it, but my military family was very command and control. That's not the same as relationship. Then physical health, intellectual brain, lifestyle adventure. So you're pouring energy back into your soul. Tribe, who you hang out with, this matters. Then your financials, and then your career. So those are my 8 gardens of life. And I write them all down, everything I can think of. And then I look at this 100 times a year. So twice a week at least, I'm looking at my goals. If you saw, there's all kinds of strikes and Roman numerals on it. So the reason we pick up our phones so much, Ola, is because we get an endorphin hit from picking up our phone. So the mind is designed to reward you for solving problems. So the reason we have evolved as a species to be masters of earth, if you will, even though we've got a lot of improvement in that area, I'm sure that we can do a lot better. But we still are the dominant species, is because we get rewarded for solving things. That's the human mind, right? So I've turned that to my favor by engaging with my goals in such a way that every time I strike off, oh, I worked out today, oh, I read a book, or I had a date with my wife, I'm getting an endorphin hit. So I'm kind of almost addicted now to setting and achieving my goals. It was a long journey to get here with a lot of failure, and a lot of times I would procrastinate and put off my goals and not look at them. But today what I understand is it's an aircraft carrier and I'm slowly tweaking it. So here's an example of a goal that I just really realized this year, after 22 years of doing this, that in my health, like I'm a 52-year-old man, I got a 3-year-old son. So I know that it's very important to me to try to live as long as possible because I want to be there as a good example to my son. So just this year, I've dropped the alcohol. Now, I was never a heavy drinker, but I used to drink a glass of wine or two with my wife almost every night. Now we've cut it down to only the weekends. So I say drop alcohol, not 100%. But to me, if you'd gone to me 5 years ago and said in 5 years, you're only going to drink on the weekends, and maybe not even then, I just said, you're out of your mind. That's how I decompress. I'm not a heavy drinker. I'm not a party, but like 1 or 2 glasses of wine just calms me down before I go to bed, and it's a way of letting go. But if you look at all the studies, alcohol doesn't make you live longer. It's not good for your health. And I don't judge it either. If you want to drink, by all means drink. I mean, you don't want to, none of us are living forever. But what I'm trying to do is maximize my health, optimize, lower my body fat, get good night's sleep, and alcohol doesn't serve any of that. So now we basically drink on weekends, not during the week. And even then, like, not a lot. And that's a new tweak that I've added. So now I know this aircraft carrier has moved one more degree, the aircraft carrier of my life and my history and all the things I'm doing, one more degree towards health. The other thing I added last year, a couple years ago, was intermittent fasting. So you go back to the mindset. The mind knows you have to be curious and learning and developing all the time. So what I do is I read and I study and I'm learning all the time. So a few years ago, I started paying attention to my nutrition. That's led to reading books like the Longevity Diet, the Blue Zones book, and realizing that we eat just way too much as humans. It's not our fault. We come from survival where there's not enough food. So clever people design how you can eat like Pop-Tarts and food that lasts forever, which it never used to do. So we all eat too much, and it's not really anyone's fault. It's not an evil plan of people to take advantage of. It's just been the evolution of humanity. So you now have to take authorship and ownership of that. So now I'm intermittent fasting. I haven't eaten anything today until noon. I'm intermittent fasting 5 days a week. Again, on weekends, I do whatever I want. I don't eat sugar during the week. On weekends, I do whatever I want. So I'm not trying to be I'm not trying to be crazy dictatorship over my life and make myself have no fun. I'm trying to move the aircraft carrier one more degree. Because of that, Ola, in the last 2 years, my body fat has gone from 19% to 9%. And I would tell you that I am working out more, but it's more, I think, my diet shift than anything else. The lack of alcohol, the lack of sweets, lowering the carbs, not eliminating them. I had a tiny pie at my son's birthday, coconut cream pie. It was delicious. Although, because I don't eat it anymore, 20 minutes later, I was like, oh my gosh, my body's freaking out. But it tasted great. And that's all an example of these micro adjustments that you make that you barely notice in the short term, but over 2 years, it's 19% body fat to 9% body fat. That's what I'm talking about, moving the aircraft carrier. You can't move it I can't go from 19% to 9% in a month, but over 2 years of applying myself and changing my habits, I was actually surprised because I was right at 12% 90 days ago. But in the last 90 days, I made that alcohol shift really and just cut it way back. And really got more disciplined around the intermittent fasting. I was doing some of it, but not steady. And I think those two adjustments in the last 90 days gave me a 4% jump or 3% jump from 12 to 9. And anyway, that's my idea of how to shift the aircraft carrier.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you so much. I mean, I can listen to you all day. But before we kind of go into the quick rounds, I want us to touch on your books, both of your books actually, so far. So can you just tell us a little bit more about the New York Times Bestseller, the New York Times Bestseller, and the Tribe of Millionaires? Just kind of give us a quick synopsis.
Yeah, to give you an example of moving the aircraft carrier. So Wealth Can't Wait is a book I wrote as a passion project when my dad was dying of cancer. He's now passed on, rest in peace. But while he was dying, I thought.
So sorry to hear about that.
Oh, thanks, Ola. I appreciate that. He had a great life, and he was a wonderful man in many ways, and a little bit tough in others. But while he was dying, I was saddened by the fact that he was taking all this wisdom with him. And I thought maybe I should write a book. And that was 10 years ago. So it took me 7 years to write Wealth Can't Wait. During the process, I picked up a co-author, Paul Morris, who helped me with it. And I think it's a great book, and it's full of materials. It probably should have been 5 books, but if you want like a thorough understanding, it starts with mindset, and the mindset of beginning ends with the mindset of contribution, and the middle of the steps you evolve through to become more and more successful, what you have to do. So it's who you have to be, what you have to do, and then how to stay there, what you have to think, what you have to do, and then how to be. I think it's an amazing book. I love that book. And it was 7 years, and it was like, it beat me to death. And then the second book I wrote was 7 months. And the reason was I hired a ghostwriter. I got way smarter, like we always do. And I hired a guy who's a way better student than me. I wasn't that great a student. I was a C student. So writing that book was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And the editors made it flow better, made it good. And the material and the wisdom in it, I think, is really excellent. It's like a lifetime of learning. But Miracle Morning Millionaires is my favorite book. It's an easy read. You can read it in like 3 hours. That's more my preference on books. I don't really want to send people back to school. And the ghostwriter did an incredible job. He interviewed me on the phone with my co-authors. We read the first draft. We made a few tweaks, and boom, it was delivered. That's an example of, 7 years of doing it the hard way and then writing the next book. So the first one is like a master's degree in business, if you will. And then the second one is like showing you in a very simple business parable how important your tribe is. And honestly, the further I've gone in life, I think if you did nothing but hung out with the right people, your life would be successful. And we all say it, it's your peer group. When you have kids, you're like, if your kids start hanging out with the wrong people, you might even change schools to get them out of that school, right? But you don't think about it as an adult. You don't sort of ask yourself, like, am I hanging out with the right people?
Mm-hmm.
And this is me. It sometimes is painful. It means moving on from people. Like I've had to move on from high school friends that weren't doing anything wrong, other than that their idea of a good life was to drink beer and watch football and, look at how pretty girls are. And that was it. Like, that's their idea. And then work 9 to 5, but not too hard. Right. That's not what I want for my life. I want more. So it's not that I don't love those people, because I still do. And I'll have a beer with them anytime, but I want to see how much I can live this life. How far can I go? What can I do to be a contributor to this, what I believe is a gift of life? And so if you just hang out with the right people, it's so much easier. If your best friend was Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and maybe Michael Dell, the odds of you having any financial problems is like 0, right? But if your best friends are like a drug dealer, an alcoholic, and a womanizer, the odds are very high that your life is going to look something like what those people have created for themselves. So
Absolutely.
if you did nothing else but throw yourself in a new environment. So that's what Tribe of Millionaires is about. That's what we've created at GoBundance. And it's really about being in an environment that gives the opportunity to become more.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we're definitely dwelling into the quick rounds. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
First question. What makes you, David, unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or from the next girl?
For me, it's always looking for more. Like I've always I didn't ever quit on me. I think some people kind of quit, mail it in. And I always was like, why not me? Why can't I figure that out? Why can't I be wealthy? Why can't I be healthy? And I think never quitting on me is probably what I'm most proud of about the guy that's in here.
I like that. I like that so much. I can relate. That's like my number one as well. I can tell you're a big reader as well. So what was the last book that you read? And what was the one thing you picked out from that book?
So I'm reading Conscious Loving right now with my wife, and also the 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership, which was written by guys that studied conscious loving. And the number one takeaway of it is that I am at 100% cause of how I feel, of my moments, of the way I am. So you're at 100% cause of that. And so it's extreme ownership. Doesn't mean you're a cause of what happened to you. Bad things can happen to you. I'm not trying to take any of that away, but you're 100% cause of how you show up in the universe. And they both say that same thing. You must take 100% responsibility for your life.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Last question. Obviously, you've got your businesses, you've got Magnifying Capital, you've GoBundance, you're doing a ton of stuff. What do you do for fun?
I travel. I hang out with my kids. I'm in a great community with a bunch of wonderful kids, wonderful friends, which I've gotten really lucky on, by the way. I didn't used to have a huge amount of friends. I was pretty purposeful and driven. I didn't have a bunch of friends other than my work friends, but now I have a community with 4 couples and 10 kids, and they all roam. They're in my house like almost every day. I golf with my wife. That's one of my favorite things to do. And then I read. So reading, golfing, traveling, and then the kids.
Awesome. David, thank you so much. If there's a dual listener thinking of maybe GoBundance or, just kind of to learn more about you, maybe get your books, where's the best place folks can reach out to you, get connected with you, know more about what you're doing?
Sure, davidosborn.com, or I am David Osborn at Instagram. And then don't forget they can get a free copy of Tribe of Millionaires by going to the website and just paying for shipping and handling.
Awesome. And what was the website again, just to be sure we have it?
tribeofmillionaires.com.
Awesome.
Tribeofmillionaires.com.
Awesome. David, it's been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate you spending time with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for what you do, Olaf. Thank you for having me on your show.